Today, I'm here interviewing Monica Smit of Reignite Democracy Australia. She's the main head of the movement in Australia, the freedom movement, the movement against the corona dictatorship. Thank you very much, Monica, for doing this interview with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I know what's going on in Austria, and it's an honor to speak to your audience. Thank
you very much. So Monica, tell us a little bit. You know, Austria gets often confused with Australia right now. That's unfortunately not very wrong. What's happening right now in Australia?
Well, I will say, I do have a big voice in Australia, but there are many other influences. I'll just say that to begin with. But look, in Australia, the worst thing that's happening right now is vaccine mandates for all workers to cross borders and to shop, etc. And I know Austria is going through that as well. But our vaccine mandates for work started about 6 weeks ago, and I would like to say to your audience that my estimate is that 60% of people who got vaccinated for not for health reasons, but because of coercion. And a lot of people regret that. And the reason that the government was able to uphold the vaccine mandates for businesses was because people who didn't want it got it because they were scared. And I understand what they did. I don't judge them for what they did, but I'm just telling Austria now, before the mandates start for you guys, that if 33% of you are not vaccinated, now is the time to still say no, because then the mandate won't work, because it has actually worked here. And now we're on to the third booster shot. One of our premiers even said, one of the health officials said, instead of buying a Christmas present, why don't you go book yourself a booster shot? So it's a big joke for them. And the point is that all those people who got the 2 first doses and had to go against their moral compass, and really it was hard for them, now they're having to do it again to keep their jobs. So I say to people, if you're going to draw the line in the sand, eventually anyway, you may as well draw it now. And so that's really what's going on in Australia. And I will just say quickly that Victoria has just put through new legislation which gives Daniel Andrews, who is the worst premier in Australia, complete control to put pretty much anyone in prison for any reason and just stop elections or do whatever he wants. So it's pretty crazy.
Well, that's really something. One of the biggest questions for everyone watching the situation in Australia a little bit more close is obviously what's going on with the quarantine camps. So you have those camps. How can you go and do one of those camps? We heard that even if you're negative, you can still be in one of those camps. How comes? What exactly is going on there?
Yeah. So currently we have one operational in the Northern Territories, which is what you would have seen a lot of. And basically, if you get known to be a close contact with someone who has tested positive, they forcibly bring you to this camp. And if you don't go, you'll get a $5,000 fine. And that's an average wage per month is probably $3,500. So it's more than your monthly wage. And then when you get to that facility, if you step over the yellow line on the balcony, you'll get a $5,000 fine as well. And people have tried to escape. So obviously it's not very voluntary, is it? And the funny thing is that so the reason why they can find you is because we have been using the QR system for over a year now. So a lot of places, McDonald's, all these big chains, they won't let you in unless you actually check in. And when you check in, you're telling the government where you've been. And so if someone who has been at the same location that you were at tested positive for COVID, then you get a call from the authorities and they will take you to this camp. But the strange thing is it's only this one state that has them operational. So the other ones can't do that. All they do is tell you to stay home and call you and annoy you all day long. But in Victoria and Queensland, these facilities are under construction. They're worth billions of dollars and they're huge. And I know the only thing I know for a fact is that Victoria, that they will be staffed by prison guards, so they'll be staffed by prison guards and they'll have fences around them and you can't leave your room or balcony. So I don't know about you, but that sounds like a prison to me. And the thing is as well is if you're double, triple vaccinated, you're supposed to be able to quarantine at home if you come from overseas. So that's happening now. So if triple vaccinated or fourth vaccinated or whatever, if they are allowed to quarantine at home, what's the quarantine camps for then? Right? Yeah. And we all know the answer is for the unvaccinated. That's what it's for.
obviously. Okay, that's really crazy. So you are part of a huge movement. We saw hundreds, thousands of people protesting against this. What does the movement look like right now? Are there bigger demonstrations planned? What is the next goal you want to achieve with the movement?
So we have the federal election in about 4 or 5 months here. And there is a new party called the United Australia Party that is really growing, and it's actually got more members than either of the major parties. And we're going to see a really historic, interesting election. And the protests have been huge. Every week they beat their own records. In Melbourne, we had 700,000 people on the streets, and Melbourne only has the whole state has a population of 6 million. So that's over 10% of people were on the streets. So you can know for sure that there are people at home that didn't go who also agree. So this is a huge movement. But the interesting thing is that we were protesting against this bill, and the bill went through anyway. So protests are great, but they're not actually, like, the government isn't listening to them, but we're still going to continue doing them. But I think the federal election in 4 months, this is going to be the time in history in Australia where if a protest vote is possible, if a peaceful revolution is possible, it's going to be then. And if it doesn't happen then I'm pretty concerned about the country.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really helpful. So you said that you know the situation in Austria a little bit. We know the situation in Australia a little bit. From an Austrian perspective or from a European perspective, it seems like they use Australia as to show the world over there how things are done. So we think that Australia is used as an example for lots of other countries around, the same as Austria is used as an example for the European countries here. Do you have anything to say about the other countries you maybe know, maybe New Zealand and other countries next to you? How are they doing? Is it better to go there? Are people trying to move there? Is this a thing?
Well, actually, it's interesting. In Australia, every state has been quite different. So in some states, it's like COVID doesn't even exist, and some pockets. So people are definitely moving around. So in a 3 months period in Victoria, 42,000 people left the state, which is huge. So people are kind of running away, but within the country, because obviously Australia is hard to get away from if you're not vaccinated and if you don't have anywhere to go. New Zealand is pretty much as bad as Australia now. It wasn't before. But yeah, each state is acting like its own country. So people are just hopping around. But there's different rules in different borders and things like that. So yeah, New Zealand, it's all bad here, definitely. But Victoria is the worst.
Okay. Good. Then thank you very much. Can you tell us maybe one last thing about you personally? You're doing this fight since a time. What kind of persecution did you go through? How is it to be ahead of a fight here? Because in Austria, we know that lots of the faces of the fight being persecuted by the police. They are not allowed to do anything anymore. Police going after them everywhere, every time they get tons of trials in front of the court. How is it in Australia to be the opponent to this terrible tyranny?
Yeah, it's the same. So I was arrested and charged with something called incitement, which is meant for like criminal things. And obviously breaking COVID restrictions are only fines, that you only get fines. You don't go to jail for them. Anyway, what they do is they get you on this charge, and then they give you bail conditions that silence you. And so the bail conditions were so bad that I couldn't sign them because it would have shut down my whole organization and shut my mouth too. And so I said no, and I went to prison for 22 days, and I wouldn't take a PCR test, so I wasn't allowed outside the whole time. And we appealed the bail conditions, and we got all of the draconian ones taken away. So now I can still do my job and speak on behalf of the people. The only thing I can't do is break the COVID restrictions myself. So that obviously does create a bit of anxiety, because the COVID restrictions change all the time and they're really confusing. So I haven't been able to go to protests. I haven't been able to promote events, but I am able to promote, campaigns online and things like that. And before I forget, I do want to say that when they do things like that to you, and this is going to happen in Austria in a big way soon because of what's happening, and because of some other things you told me about the how they're trying to silence you. And I would say that obviously it's a huge compliment in a weird way that they're obviously threatened by you. So it's actually encouraging to keep going. If they're not coming after you, then you probably aren't loud enough anyway, right? But I do understand that it's really difficult, and I've been taken away from my family because of all of this. That my family's houses have all been raided. My 4-year-old nephew was questioned by police when the parents weren't looking. So you know, it's yes, I've paid a really high personal toll, but guess what? I have peace. The people who confronted my 4-year-old nephew, do you think he's sleeping at night peacefully? No way, no way. So would you rather be in pain and fight hard and have peace and sleep at night, or would you prefer to just have an easy life and know that you could have done more? I know which one I would prefer. And so I would do it all over again, and probably it's going to get worse for all of us. But I'd rather be in jail knowing I did the right thing than not. So that would be my message. And also, just one last thing is that I want to give you guys hope that the Australian freedom movement is incredible. There are law cases coming up here. There's doctors coming out here. There's all these great ideas. And yes, we can get distracted with the small fires once in a while, but overall, the movement is incredible. And I'm really proud of the Australian people because we have gone through the most draconian measures. We have been pushed against the wall potentially more than anyone else. And because of that, our percentages of the freedom movement versus people who are on the COVID narrative is really maybe one of the highest in the world. I don't know, but it's really high. And so I want Austria to know that the worse things get, the more community you guys will have and the stronger you will become. And I'm really confident that with your high non-vaccination rates, you guys can put up a really good fight, and I'm excited to see you do it.
Thank you very much. It was really a very, very impressive thing you just said. One last end statement, maybe. Is there anything you want to say about Australia? We don't know. Is there anything we do not know? We know from the media how they go after. We know everything. Is there anything you want to say we don't know?
Well, yeah, sure. I bet you probably don't know that we have what we call authorized health officers, and these are not policemen. They are hired specifically to police the COVID restriction compliance. So they go into businesses, they check that they're following the QR code rules and the masks and all this sort of stuff, and they close them down. And it's funny because they're not police, but they have actually more rights than police. So they don't need a search warrant. They can take whatever they want. They don't need to tell you what they're doing. So if a group went into a doctor's surgery and took personal patient files the other day. They just took them, and it's all on camera. It made the mainstream media as well. They tried to go to court to get the files back. He just wanted to know actually which files they took. The court ruled against him. So these are, I know this is extreme, but I call these authorized health officers, they're Nazis. I'm sorry. That's just what they are. They're making a really big paycheck, like really big paycheck, $2,000 a week, you know, and the average wage is $3,500 a month. So they're making 4 times the amount of a normal person, and their conscience is being rattled every time they do this terrible thing and they close a small Chinese shop or a small laundromat, you know. And these people are going to end up being very dangerous if they keep being able to do what they can. And do you have those in Austria?
No, we don't have them. The police is doing all the work here.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, there seems to be this battle between police and authorized health officers. It's like we don't know who to call to ask these questions, because the police will say they need to answer the question and they say the police needs to answer the question, and that makes it really confusing for everyone. So yeah, that's going on. And then just quickly, on January 10th, vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds are coming in. Do you have that too?
Yes, they already introduced it. The European Union said that vaccinations are allowed for 5-year-olds now. Right. But in Austria, for example, in Vienna, the mayor of Vienna did those vaccinations, so-called off-label vaccination, already before that. So it's really in front of the cameras. So in front of the cameras, it's really sick. It's sick.
Right. Yeah. So that's a bit, but like I'll just say, you know, again with Australia is there's a lot of hope and people are fighting really hard. So good luck.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica. That's really, it's amazing to listen to your words. Christmas is coming, so everyone gather with your families, pray. You need the hope. You need everything you can get. The next few months won't be easier. And I think the sacrifice Monica already brought is a good example. We all have to be ready for sacrifices. I think if we are ready for them, if we work together, if we fight for the good, for the truth, then at the end we will definitely win this whole battle. And I'm 100% sure of this. Thank you, Monica, for being here. Thank you for doing this interview. I wish you a Merry Christmas. I wish you a very good fight. And please don't give up. You're a great example for all of us.
Thank you so much for having me.